My story about the time I broke weed laced with Amanita Muscaria. I didn't know it at the time, but the first warning sign was how wrong the smoke felt in my lungs. It wasn't the familiar warmth or light pressure I expected. It was heavy, fungal, thick in a way smoke shouldn't be, like I had inhaled damp earth and rusted metal. My throat tightened immediately, and when I exhaled, the cloud lingered longer than it should have, hanging in the air like it was undecided about leaving. I remember laughing at first, nervous laughter, the kind you do when something feels off but you don't want to admit it yet. Then the ceiling bent, not metaphorically, not subtly. It folded inward like soft cardboard being pressed by a giant invisible thumb. The light fixture stretched into an oval, pulsing faintly as if it had a heartbeat. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, stood up too fast, and the floor slid sideways. Gravity no longer pointed down. My hands sank into it too deeply, like the fabric had turned into warm clay. My fingers, they were too long now. Each knuckle bulged and contracted independently, as if something was crawling beneath my skin, rearranging me from the inside. That's when the sound began. A low droning hum, like a choir humming a single note far underground. It didn't come from any direction, it came from everything. The walls vibrated. The hum rose in pitch until it felt like it was scraping the inside of my skull. I tried to tell myself it was just a bad high, but then the room started watching me. Every surface grew porous. Tiny dark openings appeared in the paint, in the wood, in the fabric of the curtains. They dilated slowly, rhythmically, and inside each one was an eye, milky, lidless, unblinking. Thousands of them. They didn't move independently. They tracked me together. I staggered backward, my foot catching on nothing, and fell. The impact never came. Instead, I kept falling, through the floor, through layers of color and texture that felt biological. Veins, membranes, spongy red lattices pulsing with viscous fluid. I was passing through something alive, something enormous, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that this thing had always been here. I landed on my knees in my apartment again, gasping, drenched in sweat. But it wasn't the same apartment. The geometry was wrong. The corners curved inward like they were collapsing under their own weight. The hallway stretched far longer than it should have, bending slightly to the left, like it was avoiding something. The door at the end of it was breathing, expanding and contracting, with a wet, fleshy sound. I tried to scream. My mouth opened, but instead of sound, a swarm of moths poured out. Thick, heavy-bodied insects that flapped clumsily and smashed against the walls, leaving smears of dark residue. Each moth had a human face stretched across its body, frozen in a silent scream. The terror hit me all at once. Not fear, annihilation. The absolute certainty that I had poisoned myself beyond recovery, that I had broken my mind permanently, that this was the last coherent thought I would ever have. I crawled toward the bathroom, dragging myself by my arms because my legs no longer responded correctly. They lagged behind me, moving seconds after I told them to, like they were receiving delayed signals from a failing brain. The hallway elongated with each movement. Doors multiplied along the walls, dozens of identical doors, each one slightly ajar, each one leaking a different sound. Crying, laughter, wet chewing, the scraping of nails on bone. Something behind me began to follow. I didn't see it at first. I felt it, a pressure in the air, like a storm approaching inside my skull. With every inch I crawled forward, it drew closer. I could feel its attention like hands pressing into my back. "Don't look," a voice whispered directly into my thoughts. I didn't recognize the voice. It sounded ancient, worn down by centuries of speaking. I looked anyway. The thing filling the hallway behind me was massive and wrong, composed of overlapping human torsos fused together in a spiral. Faces emerged and receded along its surface, mouths opening and closing in asynchronous rhythm. Its limbs bent in too many directions, joints folding inward, outward, sideways. It dragged itself forward not by crawling, but by unfolding, like a living equation solving itself step by step. All of its eyes were mine. Every face bore my features at different ages: childhood, adolescence, moments I had forgotten, moments I wished I could forget. Each one mouthed the same phrase without sound: "You let us in." I lost control of my body then. My bladder released. My muscles spasmed violently. I felt my spine twist, vertebrae popping as if they were being individually removed and reinserted incorrectly. My sense of scale collapsed. My hands were suddenly the size of dinner plates, my arms miles long, my torso compressed into a dense, aching knot. I reached the bathroom and slammed the door, but the door no longer functioned as a barrier. It was paper thin, translucent, and I could see the thing's shadow pressing against it, warping its shape. I turned toward the mirror. There was no reflection. Instead, the mirror showed a vast fungal forest under a crimson sky. Towering mushroom stalks stretched upward endlessly, their caps dripping a glowing, amber fluid that fell upward instead of down. Figures hung suspended in the air between them, humanoid silhouettes impaled on invisible spikes, twitching slowly. One of them turned its head and looked at me. It smiled with my teeth. The mirror cracked, and the crack spread across my vision. Reality shattered. I was no longer in my apartment, no longer in my body. I was a concept, an idea being examined by something vast and indifferent. Time ceased to behave. Moments stacked on top of each other like broken glass. I experienced my birth, my childhood, my death, and my decomposition. Simultaneously, each phase overlapping and bleeding into the next. Voices surrounded me, not auditory, but ontological. They spoke in meaning rather than sound. This is what you are when the rules dissolve. This is the shape beneath the name. I begged. I don't know who I begged. I offered apologies, promises, prayers to gods I didn't believe in. The response was laughter. Not cruel, not kind, just amused. My sense of self peeled away layer by layer. My name became unfamiliar. Language unraveled. Thoughts fragmented into raw emotion and sensation. I was fear without an object. Pain without location. Awareness without identity. At one point, if points still meant anything, I became convinced I had died, and this was the afterimage of consciousness, slowly decaying. I watched myself rot from the inside out. My organs liquefied, my bones softened. Fungal growth sprouted through my ribs, blooming outward in violent bursts of color. I felt myself being absorbed, not eaten, incorporated, as if my mind were being threaded into a larger network, my thoughts dissolving into something collective and ancient. I sensed countless other presences, echoes of minds that had touched this same space and never fully returned. Their panic lingered like residue. Eventually, mercifully, the intensity began to wane. The entities receded, not leaving, just stepping back. The world began to reassemble itself incorrectly at first, like a badly remembered dream. My body reformed in stages. Sensation returned painfully. Gravity reasserted itself with brutal force. I woke on the bathroom floor, shaking uncontrollably, my throat raw from screaming I didn't remember doing. The mirror was intact. The hallway was normal. The silence was deafening. But the terror didn't leave. For days afterward, reality felt thin. Shadows moved when they shouldn't. The hum returned when rooms were too quiet. I avoided mirrors. Sleep brought fragments, mushroom forests, spirals of faces, the sensation of being watched from. Inside my thoughts. I know now that whatever I experienced didn't feel like imagination. It felt like trespassing, like I had opened a door not meant for me and seen something that resented being observed. And sometimes, late at night, when the room is still and the air feels too heavy, I swear I can feel it again, waiting,